Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us here for another Sound Seal webinar. My name is Aaron Duncan, and today we'll be speaking on the Sound Seal exterior style curtains. And we'll walk through a few different types and talk about some application. And then we'll wrap it up pretty quickly here. So hope you guys are having a great Wednesday so far, and thanks for joining us today. Let's go ahead and jump right in. So right now, just for those who may not know, Sound Seal's been in the industrial curtain business for about 40 plus years, and our EXT line, or exterior grade products, have been a big portion of that business, and we've done a lot of great things and had some great product advancement in that world as well. So let's move on through here. Right here, if you have any questions or concerns about application, we'll walk through this, but this is really basic stuff as far as construction noise, drilling sites, special events, some seasonal work, all the way to permanent. And right now we're just going to talk about temporary construction, temporary or construction type work sites. And here you're going to see a 12-foot high wood post fence. We'll get another look at the back side of this later on. But this is a great example of grommets top and bottom. We've got a nice 2-inch vertical Velcro overlapping seal here. And then, of course, we've got a fender washer and screw holding these to the center. Again, this is a terrific application. I believe this was a 2-year project, and we had some residents on the other side of this. And good to note here, the quilt is facing the noise source. And the barrier is on the back, so this is a BBC. Most of these are going to be BBC style panels, which means barrier-backed composite. So quilt on the front, barrier to the back. Here we've actually got two temporary curtain style on this particular tower. And one is going to be with reinforced barrier. The other is going to be with non-reinforced barrier, and we'll talk through both of those really quickly. So at the top of this tower, we're concerned with wind load. We want things to be nice and strong. So we go with a what we call a 13X style panel, and that has exterior grade Velcro and grommets, and then it does have the reinforced mass-loaded vinyl. And again, you're looking at the back of the curtain, the barrier side. The quilt side is to the inside of this scaffolding. And then down below, we have what's called an N-style panel, an EXT-N style panel. And that's using a non-reinforced barrier. And again, a little bit of value engineering here. We had several of these towers they were working on. So up to a certain height, we did not need the reinforced barrier. It was just an expense that wasn't necessary. So we went with a non-reinforced toward the lower portion and a reinforced version toward the upper portion where we get some higher wind. And again, both of these have great facing, they're economical, and they're perfect for the short term up to 5-year when properly installed, and they work great in just about any exterior application. And here we're going to see some test data here. So we're looking at NRC, our noise reduction coefficient, regarding the quilt mainly, and then the overall density of the product is going to lend to the STC in these numbers here. I want to point out that the BBC 13X-2, that is kind of our hottest, not even kind of, that is definitely our biggest seller in the construction world temporary job site market. That 0.85 and NRC and the 32 STC really lend itself to kind of the jack of all trades. It is also specified in the New York City Noise Code and called out by that model number, the BBC 13X2, for construction projects to adhere to mitigation standards. If you look down here to the bottom right, you're going to see the QFA, which is just a quilted product, and that's great for concrete walls, wood stockade fence walls, plywood, things of that nature. And again, this is just quilt only, no barrier, still some great NRC and still some great STC. And then just below the 13X, you're going to look at the N version, which is the non-reinforced barrier. Slightly different numbers there, although we're identical when we get to the 2-inch quilt and the 1-pound barrier. So the 13X2 and the EXTN2 are giving you similar numbers. One's reinforced, one's non-reinforced. Here we've got some very basic, very standard installation methods, and really the chain link fence is probably the most common. 90% or better of our blankets are being put up on a chain link fence or a metal fence post structure, and we're seeing here a UV resistant zip tie or wire tie, and we always want to put grommets both top and bottom at the very least, so we're securing them both top and bottom so they're not blowing in the wind or flapping in the breeze and stressing those grommets out. And again, we see this fence from the first slide, looking at the construction site, and we're securing these because they're 12 foot. We're securing them both top, middle, and bottom. So it's nice after 10 feet to get those mid grommets in there. It just pins them in place and keeps them from creating a giant sail, if you will. And this photograph, like I said earlier, is the rear of the wall. So we're seeing these posts and then the batten across the back. And as you can tell, this is barrier side on this one. This is quilt side on the other one. Here we go with the Boston Big Dig. The 13X and 13X2, actually the 13X2, was really our pilot exterior grade blanket, and it was all due to the Big Dig. Boston's Big Dig took many years, a lot of hands on deck, and we really wanted to give the city of Boston a good feeling about all the construction work. And if anybody's been through that area and driven underneath the city of Boston or through the city of Boston, you know how many backyards and small residential areas and small businesses that cuts through. In that process, we provided hundreds of thousands of blankets for these job sites that stayed up for many years and were relocated during the project as they moved along. With a 10 dBA reduction achieved on a job site like this with heavy machinery, that was a win-win for everybody, and SoundSeal included. Here we've got a slightly different application, same product, the 13X, where we're putting this on a hut. And instead of putting up a partition wall, 10 feet, 12 feet, 8 feet, whatever have you, we decided to go with a hut on this one. We didn't build the hut. That was provided by the end user, but we did provide them with the panels to line this metal tube frame structure. And this allowed them to use heavy-duty drilling equipment inside the hut, drive in and out of one end, and really protect the area from a lot of the noise that was going on during this drilling and mining application. When you need, much better coverage than just a standard curtain or partition wall, you've got to do something like an enclosed structure. And this was a great application, and we made large panels, and they strung these up, attached them in various places. And it's important to note here, as always, we're using the 2-inch vertical Velcro overlap to make sure we button that up and there's no gaping holes here. Although I see a little sneaky one down here where they had some supports, but that guy's not going to be too much problem there. And again, we've got a similar wall like the previous application where we see the barrier on the backside the quilt is facing. I believe this in Dayton, Ohio. They were doing some heavy machinery work, and I believe they're about 10 feet lower than this berm. And I believe these were up for about 2 years or so. And again, just a typical drilling operation, residential neighborhood. Really, this is 2 houses, backyard, and they remained in place and stood the test of time and weather in Ohio, no problem at all. Moving on to more permanent applications, we're talking about generators, blowers, outdoor machinery, HVAC systems, anything that is permanently installed on a piece of land or outside of a building, gas and pipeline work, stuff like that, that's permanent. This is where we're going to get into more of the long-term materials. And here we've got a nice rooftop application where I believe there were a bunch of compressors on this roof. And as you can see, we've got a beautiful install here. Everything's nice and tight. Standard 54-inch wide panel with a 2-inch overlap. quilt facing our noise source. I believe this was two-sided, so it ran all the way to the end and then made a 90-degree turn and came down, and these were 8 to 10 feet, I do believe. With our EXT facing and our long-term product, we're looking at 10 plus 15. I've seen, close to 15 to 20 on some of these. They hold up exceptionally well in extreme weather and long-term projects or permanent projects. And again, always exterior grade Velcro. We use a Gore-Tenara thread on these, grommets top, bottom, and middle when necessary. And these are actually wind load tested up to 140 miles per hour plus. So they are great when we're going up on high elevation. And again, a similar slide here, a little bit more of just the straight data, the EXT and the EXT 2-inch. This is a 1 pound. These are both 1 pound. One has a 1-inch quilt, the other has a 2-inch quilt. We even have a Cadillac model with the 2-pound barrier and then the 2-pound 2-inch. And as you can see, we get in really impressive STC values on a product that is easy to manufacture, easy to install. And again, we want to show and highlight some of this QFA over here. Again, what's important to note about a lot of these enclosed areas is that you may need, 1 or 2 or 3 sides, one a fence, but what happens with the brick wall or the concrete wall or the wood wall next to a building? Well, you get a lot of reflection off of that wall and flanking noise up and over your well-engineered enclosure, and then all of a sudden you've still got noise issues invading other areas. The quilted absorber, or that QFA EXT, is a great add-on to a project where we put that on the brick or concrete wall to prevent those reflective waves from jumping over and causing an issue there. Showing another type of application here, we've got a request for a company who wanted some larger panels with grommets installed, and they wanted to put these up horizontally as opposed to vertically. Most of our installs we've looked at so far were all vertical, and this is a horizontal. Nice application here. Again, the UV resistant facing, heavy duty barrier, nice chunky grommets there, and they've lashed this to a chain link fence. I believe this is still up today. This is a permanent structure, and if they ever need to replace these for any reason whatsoever, which they haven't, they can just take a section down and put it up there again. Or if they need to take them down for any access or add or change the fence line, they can take those down very quickly by cutting those zip ties. Another great photograph here. This is a rooftop, and just behind, past this rooftop, you can see a house in the distance and windows. That happened to be a bedroom. So this was a commercial building with a blower on top of the building, and that noise would kick on and off throughout the day and night and really caused an issue with the neighbor. And so what they did was put up a small frame, tied it off, and put some safety cables on there, and then mounted one single blanket 54 inches wide all the way down. I believe this was 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 feet or so, and they made sure they made it 2 to 3 times wider than the unit so that they didn't get much flanking around it or up over it, and it's worked out perfectly. The neighbor was happy, the business got no more complaints, and everybody was off and running. To the right of that, a much bigger project, EXTR 2-inch panels on a double jersey barrier with some steel angle. This structure was actually made to be portable and moved around a construction site that was going to be a much more lengthy project that was going to be 5+ years. So they went with the long term because of its extreme durability and the ability for us to make slightly larger panels. That was why they chose that particular product. But a great example of engineering something nice and portable that they could move around with some forklifts. And finally, we arrive at the QFA that we talked about in a couple slides. This is a great example of just a smaller application, and many of us have heard this noise or gotten that complaint where your house is next to somebody else's and their AC unit is close to your bedroom window or just some private in the house. And they built a small stockade fence around it that matched the fence for the rest of the property. And they just attached a few quilted fiberglass absorbers, the QFA EXTs, right inside. So this is actually a 4x4 three-sided enclosure. And then right up against this brick wall, they actually put another QFA. So they ended up having 4 on this with 1 on the gate, and it solved the problem. Down here, we just see a much larger version of that where we've got an array of these outside of commercial business, and they built a partition wall and angled that to prevent some of the flanking noise from going up and over, and they lined this strategically with the QFA. Again, a really great product, a lot of versatile use, lightweight as opposed to our BBC panels because these are just fiberglass quilt only. Here we got a metal shredder. This was an impressive project. At first, this building was made of metal panels, very expensive metal panels, and every time this big industrial metal shredder would throw a piece of metal errantly out of the machinery, it would strike a metal panel on the building, cause a lot of damage, $5,000 to replace a metal wall section, and they kept having to do that over and over again. So finally they said, well, what do we do here? Can we do something a little different? And we said, absolutely. So we took some EXTR, made larger sections, and here they are hanging it up in big sections with a crane. And they ended up skinning the entire skeletal structure of this once metal building. It had better acoustics than it did before. And if and when any piece of metal flew out and hit a panel, it was very easy and inexpensive to replace a single panel section. And they can sustain a bit of abuse. They're a lot more forgiving than metal. They do move a little bit. They do dampen a little bit. And so, most of the machinery or pieces that hit this do not penetrate or damage these much at all. And with a 12 dB reduction at the property line, you can best believe they were both pleased. It was a fraction of the cost of metal, and it was very simple to install. And we did this work in just about 6 weeks' time, total, start to finish. This is another great example of some oil pipeline, natural gas pumping stations. They're very loud. If anyone's visited one before or been near one, the gas that's coming into here and being transferred is extremely loud. So they built a very heavy-duty skeletal frame around each one of these transfers, and they attached our EXTR panels to that. Again, quilt facing the machinery. And this was extremely effective with a 16 dB reduction at the property line. Neighbors they thought they'd turn the machinery off at this point. So it was extremely effective. And in conjunction with these mufflers on top of these generators, it worked out very, very well. Here's a fun one. We'll save this one for last. This is the Ford Amphitheater in Coney Island. And it was an incredible project. We were offered the ability to assist a designer and architect, and they said, listen, we don't have a lot of time. We've been given the green light. What do we do to keep noise inside the amphitheater but still make it functional to the design that we have? Well, we put our heads together here, and we walked through several different types of blanket, different facings, different densities of barrier, and we made them in large sections, and we had special tie downs for each one. They lashed them and attached them to the metal frame, and then they kind of tucked it all away and hid it behind these stretched canvases here. So it's kind of the peekaboo. In some of these photos, you can barely see it, but here there's a nice one at the bottom left showing it before they put the canvas over top of it. And then we also did the walkways because, hey, people were making a lot of noise walking through these entryways and security points, and wanted to make sure we kept that noise down. And after drawings, everything approved, we fabricated, shipped, all within 8 weeks. An incredible project with all hands on deck, and just a great response from the neighborhood and the folks at the amphitheater as well. And definitely want to say thank you guys for taking 15 to 20 minutes out of your day today. And I want to leave this slide up for at least a few minutes more. If you have any questions whatsoever about this PowerPoint, or if you just want a copy of the PowerPoint itself, or any data sheets, or any case studies of anything you just saw, shoot me a quick email. Feel free to reach out on our main website at the info ad as well, or pick up the phone and reach out to one of the sales team members here, 413-789-1770. And if you've got any future project work, or you've got something perhaps on your desk right now that you just haven't had an answer for, and this looks like it'll fit the bill, we would love to talk to you. So please reach out to us. And again, thanks so much for taking time out, and we hope you've had a wonderful day. I'll mute this now, but please feel free to take this information down and reach out to us. Thank you so much.